welcome everybody. Some of you might know Dominic and myself, some of you don't, or at least Dominic and not me so far. So let me just quickly introduce myself and then hand it over to Dominic. My name is Janina and I am the Customer Success Manager here at HighRise. That means we will be working together as soon as you are working with HighRise, officially signed and sealed by contract. I will take care that you are happy with HighRise, with the HighRise platform, with the HighRise candidates, and that you find your perfect match, as quick as possible. Today, we would like to present you our experiences that we made in the recruiting and in the onboarding part of a candidate's journey. What can be good, what can go wrong, where are some hacks that we have and some best practices. And I'm now very close to these two processes, and Dominic already much longer than me. So that's why we said, okay, let's share our experience with all of you and hope to give some pretty good insights and impulses. So Dominic, would you like to say some quick words about you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Janina. I'm excited to be here again to share kind of our experiences. We'll do zero marketing. That's what we promise. Okay, we'll really just share what we learned. We'll also respect your time and close at the hour mark, so at 12 o'clock latest. Something about me, Dominic. I'm one of the 3 co-founders here at HighRise Academy. I have a sales background. I'm also heading our B2B team. I'm also deeply involved with our training academy, and we'll share more about especially onboarding best practices that we've seen and how we view the candidate market over the last few years. Great. And we'll start with that, right, Janina? We'll just do a little agenda.
Exactly.
We'll share the candidate market with you, and then quickly how we fit in. And that's just a quick reminder to some of you that may be new, because sometimes you forget, or it may not be closely or at the forefront of your mind of how HighRise works, recruiting best practices and onboarding best practices. Okay, and again, feel free to use that chat or Q&A button. Anything that pops up to your mind, we'll answer. Okay? Then, without further ado, diving into the candidate market and how we've observed it. Okay, and when we talk about that, keep in mind that HighRise mission is to grow the pool of potential sales talent, especially focused on the tech industry. So everything that we're going to say is tailored to especially the junior sales talent market. Okay, that's important as a framing. And it all started with that insight a couple of years ago. Yeah, we talked to many startups, scale-ups in our network, and what came back from all of them was the feedback that the quantity and quality of sales applications or sales applicants has never been this bad in both. Yeah, salespeople, the good ones always seem to be in jobs and never really applied and never really available, and that makes growth difficult. And recruiters snatching one one candidate from one company for sometimes more money, and it's a downward spiral. It doesn't work, and that's what we've seen kind of in the last years, and also especially what we've seen when we launched HighRise. Now, the reason is, and again, just making all of us aware that despite recent layoffs that we've seen in the market, that it seems to be overpowering that every company is laying off salespeople. That's not the case. There are some very prominent layoffs, and yes, companies are more conservative hiring, but still, it is not in balance. The demands that companies have and the supply that they have, that there is in the market, meaning there are far more candidates sought by companies than there are trained candidates that are on the job working in sales already. Okay? And back then, that's a number though that is a year old. Okay, disclaimer, yes, that will have changed a little bit. but all indications that we've seen from the last numbers that we crunched is it's still at least 3 times more demand than there is supply for talent. And that is exactly why sales recruiting is that difficult, because there are just too few candidates on the market. Now, when you look at that, okay, that there are too few candidates for the market, there's one important insight to have. And that's a study done by a psychologist called Greenberg and out of Princeton University with close to 200 people. The red dot here is the current sales population. The gray is the overall working population. And what you see here, the dark blue, is what he called a potential sales population, meaning that's all the people that have at least a soft skill combination relevant to start a successful career in sales. Now, why am I showing that to you? Because for some reason, there's so many more people that could work in sales, but they do not, because of stereotypes that they have from ages ago that mostly don't apply to tech sales, that it's more consultative, bad experiences that they maybe made in their personal environments from other sales models. But it's exactly that kind of population that we need to tap into if you want to solve the problem that there are too few candidates for the market. And the only answer is, yeah, you need to bring people into the profession that don't already work in the profession, and that is career changes. And one thing, and that's the main insight, right? That gap can only be filled to the demand that there is for sales positions if you bring new people into that career. It's obviously the mission that we have at Highrise. One thing important for you to know when you do talk to career changers, that to many of them that have absolutely zero touch points with tech or the digital industry so far, employer brand is usually less of a factor in deciding, because most brands to them are unknown with very few exceptions. So they know Zoom, they don't know Microsoft, companies like IBM, Salesforce, but the very many scale-ups that there are, and even companies like Celonis that are extremely successful, many career changers just don't know because they're niche B2B players. Okay, so that's important. Also important is for especially career changers, they want a new career, not just a job. Okay, so Janina will talk about decision factor, but that's one important insight. Training and the successful learning environment is one factor besides just the pure pay, because they feel insecure and nobody wants to feel insecure when they launch a new career. Hence, they need to be empowered and enabled with training. And since there is a war for talent, we have seen the recruiting process being the deciding factor in winning the best candidates. But that Janina will talk about in a second. Okay. So far, so good. Great. Then I do not see any questions so far. And just for you, for context, quickly, as a reminder, how Highrise fits in. Okay, so keep in mind that what we do is we do not actively source candidates. We do get them from a bouquet of measures. Yeah, so candidates apply to Highrise because they're looking for a new career. That's the reason why they apply. And they come from all walks of life. They come from social media ads. They come from TV appearances like Höhle der Löwen. One big reason why we went is making them aware of that career. It's word of mouth, it's referrals, it's universities, it's all of the above. They apply. It's free to them. We screen them for that relevant soft skill combination that I mentioned. They then go through a prep course and workshops that make them aware of what they're awaiting, what their day-to-day is like, where we're not really selling the career, but where we're making them aware of it, of what is awaiting them, so that they're more prepared for talking to you and that they really wholeheartedly decide for it. One workshop is also some sales activity training, so some calls with one of our trainers. And we then put them on a platform where you can screen them and select them. And once they're on the job, we put them through a 3-month ramp-up program that now all our candidates are getting, because they need to be empowered with that skills. Not every company is giving that to them. We'll come to it in a second. But that's how our answer is to fixing that problem, that the candidate market is just far too small. Because we get the question all the time, right? What we are screening for in the interviews is not so much their prior experience, okay? So that they all have worked in sales before is not a deciding factor for us. Many have in common that they had customer-facing experience, hospitality, gastronomy, elderly care, insurance sales, real estate sales. Those are common profiles. But we had tattoo artists that are extremely successful. They're great communicators. They really do want to prove it to themselves. They're extremely motivated, driven. They want to learn. Nothing was handed to them in their life. And if they're curious to learn and coachable, and we really think they have the potential, so growth mindset, if they have the growth mindset, then we think those are talents that you can work with. And then throughout the screening process that we go through, we help to screen them out for the ones that don't want to do it or that want it for the wrong reasons. And that's why we are still asking you, when you screen the candidates, to obviously also screen it, to also see if there's a fit for you. Because by now we're working with, I think, 160 hiring partners. They're very different in sales model, transactional, consultative, blue collar, white collar. So not all the candidates can obviously fit you, but we have, or we should have, candidates for all the hiring partners that we have. Okay, so that's just bare minimum context. Later on, for those of you that are new hiring partners, feel free to check out some of our success stories. Like John is one of the tattoo artists that we mentioned, a heartwarming story that's now successful working as an SDR at Zenloop here in Berlin. Now, looking at the time, I'm almost on time, Janina, 11:12. And now with that, turning to you and the best practices for recruiting that we've seen.
Great. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to emphasize that I'm totally excited and nervous as well, because maybe some of you know already that I am actually a career changer. I had sales experience, but I came from a different sector. I came from the textile and clothing sector, and now I'm here talking to you about recruiting practices. And it's actually my first time in front of the audience, so please be nice. I'm talking to you today about what I experienced since the last, I'm in high rise since August, so it has been 6 months something. I know that there are a lot of recruiters among you, and you have gigantic experiences and really long term. And so probably you will check it and you will have a lot of questions. But this is really what I face daily, on a daily basis, with all the candidates, with all the companies, and where I see there is a huge, what can make differences. So I will talk about this today, and feel free to, as Dominic said, raise your hand or ask questions in the chat. So this is a very interesting fact. We try to break down the success of a hiring process to a simple formula. And what we saw is that the candidate decision, as Dominic mentioned already, is not only the sum of the packaging, of the working environment, of the learning opportunity, but it is as well the company recruiting process. What does that mean? It means actually you can offer lots of money. You can offer a learning package like a budget yearly. You can offer a certain working environment. But if the recruiting process sucks, to be honest, so equals zero, then in the end, all this salary, the working right, everything, all this package doesn't matter anymore. If the company recruiting process in the beginning is not good, is not satisfying, is not giving a good feeling to the candidate, then all the rest is not that important anymore, and it can't change it because the candidate doesn't feel appreciated. He doesn't feel like welcome to the company. So it's a really, really important fact that we should keep in mind to go on in a successful hiring process. So what we see actually, that's a common practice, yeah, what we observe very often. And later on, I will show you how we suggest is a best practice to do it a little bit, to improve it a bit, yeah. So we see, okay, there are usually 3 to 4 stages. That's quite normal. Some of them have like even maybe 2. If you fall in love immediately with a candidate and you see, oh, it's a perfect fit, you can have 2, but usually it's like 3 to 4 stages. You have the typical motivational interview, the first call, and to see if there is a certain level that you work on, if there is some empathy. Then you have a role play or some kind of a case study. That's quite normal in the tech sector as well. Then you check the cultural and the team fit. You invite the candidate. He has, I don't know, 1 day in the office, and he or she has the possibility to talk to the team and experience the culture of the company. So, and fourth, this might be optional, is like a reference check. We hear that from time to time as well. And you can have a call or a meeting with the founder or the CEO to have a final decision. So actually, we talked about the 3-week cycle, but since I'm in high rise, I experienced that it has become much longer. There were lots of sick leaves in the past quarter. There are holidays. It's very difficult to get all people together, and yeah, calendars are pretty booked. So here's what we say, or we think it's the best practice. You should actually treat it like a professional sales process. What does it mean? First of all, you need to be aware how your perfect candidate should look like. Make it, instead of a IBP, make it an ICP, the ideal candidate profile, yeah? So that you really know what you are searching for upfront, yeah? So not just screening candidates. Doesn't matter if it's on HighRise or if it's on LinkedIn or wherever you're searching for them. And you just invite all of them and to see if there is like 1 or 2 that might fit. It takes your time as well, and you lose the passion for it, and it's just too much spreading, you know. So it's all about speed and structure, and this you can hold on to if you define your perfect candidate. Yeah, you prepare it, you do a smooth handover, you do a proper onboarding, and you do transparency all along the way. This is the most important. Be transparent about the time frame, about the feedback, about the process, and therefore you create trust. So ideally, it's a 10 days process. We know, okay, we know it's very hard. This is very hard, especially if there are so many people that need to be involved as well. But if you want to have the perfect candidate, and you want that the perfect candidate decides for you as well, make it as quick as possible. Yeah. So it's possible. You have the motivational interview, you have it a Zoom call, or you have it a phone call. I don't know how you do it, but yeah, give the candidate the chance to immediately check for the next day or the day after to send the role play, the case study. So really speed it up a bit.
And also here, we have companies that do it in 5 working days, right? That are extremely well organized. Of course, the staffs need to align, right? Decision makers, hiring managers shouldn't be on vacation. Of course, it makes it difficult. Candidates understand, but we do have the very extreme examples that the candidate said yes, the company said yes, and then the lawyer needs to rework a contract, and it takes 4 weeks, and then that's a very long time. And sometimes companies, candidates go cold, and they start questioning that, especially when they don't know the industry, and do pullback. So that does happen. So speed is definitely a crucial factor.
Exactly. So this is actually a wording that comes from Dominic, but I like it. It's common fuck ups. So I experience it. Negative first touch points. Recruiters are not prepared. They seem stressed. They seem not excited, not focused. Actually, we get this feedback now and then as well. I'm so sorry, but the recruiter was not was not focused. I couldn't ask questions, or he didn't really answer my questions. So candidates feel not comfortable. They feel there's no satisfaction at the end, you know. So as well, it's the same like having a broken process. So if you have like no invites, if you have duplicate invites, we just had that recently again. It can happen, of course. We are all humans, it can happen, but then go into the explanation so the candidate doesn't feel like just a number, you know. The most important is the long response time. So ghosting is not only on the recruiter side, it's as well on the candidate side. So there's not a one-way street anymore. Unfortunately, ghosting became a really, really big problem on both sides. So, and this is caused due to long response times. Candidates lose just the interest. So we can totally understand if we would be on the other side. False promises, a really big one as well. Just, yeah, talking about, I don't know, 35K for the first year, sending the contract, having only 30K. I think we all can agree that this is like, we wouldn't like it either. So what we think are possible course for it are if you as a recruiter are motivated and really informed. So give the candidate the possibility to ask questions, be focused, be prepared on possible questions as well. You should as well define and live the process. You should have fun and you should show it. I know after a certain time, after, I don't know, years of recruitment, it might seem difficult, but I mean, it gets just easier then. If you lose your drive for it, and the candidate feels it, and you will lose the candidate and the position will stay vacant. So if you really go for this process and for the right match, and you're like the hunter for the right candidate, it will make everything easier. So make the ghosting as well difficult. If you go for shorter processes, you can share calendar invites. That's nowadays the easiest. Just get your calendar link, and the candidate can choose the date that they want to have by themselves. Send out the meeting reminders, really important one. Show that you care. Another one that we just talked about lately is even there are so many delays. Dominic said about the contracts as well. There are so many possibilities nowadays to go for e-signatures. So we know that by law, you have to send the normal contracts, the paper contracts out as well, but this can be done in a later step. If you have the e-signature, the digital signature from the candidate, it's safe, it's done. So try and evolve that and use the digital versions of all that process tools that are here.
Perfect. And just from my side, two things that we've seen from the very first day until today, what Janina said, the motivated, informed recruiter. So there are a couple of companies in our pool that have extremely good, passionate recruiters. And some work at companies where candidates first think, that's not the sexiest company to me. It's an industry that I couldn't have seen myself working at. And of course, we are objective, right? Where we say, hey, go into that interview, see what the culture is like, because in the end, you're solving problems. And they're absolutely ecstatic after talking to that recruiter. Really, because the culture, they're eating it, they're living and breathing it. So what does it mean? To some of you, or some companies, not all, we observe still want to outsource the first level interview, the motivational interview, to relatively new employees, sometimes interns or working students, because obviously it's mass. But just like the SDR is the frontline person and is that representation of your company, it is the recruiter. So that should be a very skilled, a very experienced person to win the best candidates, because this is the first touch point that makes or break the rest of the interview process usually. And just like in sales, if you have the first conversation, the next one should ideally be, why not the next day, the day after? The longer the wait in between, the more candidates go cold, just as much as prospects go cold, and the no-show rate increases. So also we need to emphasize very short durations of time between interviews that take place.
Perfect. So you saw that before, very important for us, and what I'm emphasizing in our onboarding calls as well. What we are checking on, what we think is the most important that you should check as well, is the curiosity and the coachability of a candidate. Because if they show the motivation to grow and to learn something new, and if they want to have a new career, they are really eager to learn everything. So they will improve, they will learn, they will soak it up like a sponge. And this is the most important compared to the previous experience. If somebody is like, really, I can only talk about myself. I did a decision after I did my school. Yes, I did it with the university and all that stuff. But in the end, I wasn't happy. So do I have to stay in this field forever till the end of my working career? No, I don't. I want to change. I wanted to change. So I took all my experiences that I had and I applied at High Rise. And they checked and they said, Janina, okay, you had a certain previous experience, but you are curious and you seem to be coachable. So let's try. And this is exactly what we say as well, that these are the most two important factors that you should check on for the candidates, because all the rest can be learned if the motivation is there. So for the motivational interview, we see then that you assess the motivation, you check the career, the role expectation, and the company fit first. And this should take only about like 30 minutes. That's enough to grab the personality of a person and to see if their motivation is there. So, but if you go for an individualized approach and you be prepared, yeah, and you have all this enthusiasm, and you can really, really get the whole, how to say, like person, yeah, the whole personality of this person. And then you can evaluate correctly if this might be a fit or not. And then you can check on for coachability, and you can check if you can make it this candidate for your company that is fitting best for your company. Yeah. Role play, the third step, or second step, depends, no, the second step, sorry. Yes, here you will check then if there is the willingness to learn, if he or she has the talent and a certain logical thinking, if they can talk, if they can write properly, if the communication, the verbal and the written communication is like you want them to be. So this is what you can check in the role play or in the case study. I stay now with the naming of the role play. It includes case studies as well. Better if you do, for example, like really put them in a everyday task, yeah, like they would do every day. So that means give them, for example, a task, how they would do a lead priority citation. Yeah. So give them the website, tell them like, yeah, now you know a little bit about our product. How would you go for our leads? How would you search for them? Please let us know how you do that. And in the second step, you can prepare an outbound process. For example, you can prepare a mail or you can prepare a cold call. Yeah. So this would be like a really everyday task that they do in their later job in your company. So afterwards, you can go for a self-reflection and you can get the manager feedback. Afterwards, they can repeat this cold call or this cold email. Yeah. And they get another feedback. This is how you can actually see if they are coachable, if they are motivated, if the logical thinking works like you would like to have it. And the good thing about this is as well that the candidate gets a much better impression of what his or her job will be later on. So it's all about the expectation of the candidate as well towards this job and what he or she will be doing for the next couple of years. Yeah.
Perfect. And also to say that, right, the best companies that we've seen, that's kind of our, where we try to filter it down, right? If we had to do consulting on the topic, that's what we've seen, what really yields the best experiences and the best results from those expert role plays, especially when you have the lead prioritization. So like Janina said, you let them research new leads, and you let them, you see if based on what you have listed on the website, they find out what ICP and IBP says, if they see pattern. And then even going one step further and saying, listen, you have a list of 100 tasks, 100 leads. In the next week, you're supposed to tackle the 30 most promising. How do you prioritize? Based on which merits do you decide which leads you tackle? And then you kind of test the logical thinking. And that coupled with the email, you see, do they do research? Do they do look at YouTube videos on how to best structure emails, or do they not? So are they curious? And doing the cold calls and letting them reflect on it. Are they humble? Are they self-reflected? And then with the manager feedback, how do they incorporate it? Is the coachability and the willingness to learn. And then you've really gotten a pretty good, well-rounded impression of a candidate. And that's really worked very, very well.
Perfect. Thanks, Dominic. So for you now, as we promised, we give you a little insights as well on the salary front and on the location front and remote working. So we have some figures from October last year, 2022, so that you get a feeling of where candidates are expecting salaries, packages, and where where you can more successfully hire someone, or where it will be quite a fight with other companies. So we're talking here about the base salary distribution. We found out there's a benchmark of like around 40,000. We have actually a really major part on the 35 till 45,000 K. Unfortunately, still some under 35, but I have to say that includes as well companies who give, for example, company cars because they involve field sales. So then, of course, they are a little bit lower in the base salary, but then in the benchmark, it's around 40,000. So on the OTE, we reached then some 52,700. That means we are mainly around 46 to 55,000, but of course higher as well possible, 56 to 65, which is a really, really good one. So just that you see that for once now, you can think about it, what's in your company, the current salary, and do you experience any difficulties in the negotiation with the candidates, yes or no? Or do you see that candidates somehow drop out of the process after you talked about the salary? Just come back to us if you need any assistance on that. If you need any more detailed feedback, we can help you there and make sure that you find your perfect match much quicker and more reliable.
And also on these, right, we have seen admittedly that companies hire candidates at 30K. They do see a higher attrition of talent, right? I mean, you all know that once a candidate goes on LinkedIn, puts SDR, BDR on the LinkedIn title, they'll be hammered with LinkedIn requests from recruiters. So make sure salary is not everything as we described, right? It's a recruiting process, it's a learning opportunity, it's company environment. But salary needs to be competitive enough that they don't fall at the very first best offer, because what they get right now is barely enough to survive. Okay, so that's really important to keep in mind. And also, just as a side information, what are profiles of SDRs, BDRs being evaluated on? So what is the merit for their bonus, their variable compensation? It's usually a mix. What we see, quantitative measures are still very much on vogue. So that is held discovery calls or booked demos, plus usually a qualitative measure. Yeah, so pipeline contribution or pipeline value generated over a quarter, over a month, depending on how fast your business turns. And some do also give additional compensation, like 1% in revenue generated from deals that were like outbound generated and qualified by them. Yeah, so that's usually some of the measures that we see the company use to incentivize and measure SDR/BDR performance.
Great. So, and now for the remote work and location. So just want to emphasize, this is all just on Germany. So it's on DACH level, it's just Germany here as well, October 2022. We see quite change now, unfortunately, going back from remote to actually 28% no remote at all. So no hybrid working as well. The hybrid working is the light rosé, which means not 100% remote, regular check-ins required, exactly the 37%. 34% say yes, remote, completely possible. Yeah. So that's interesting for you as well. And the location distribution, we still see there's a really high need in Berlin, followed by Munich, Cologne, Stuttgart, Frankfurt. So it's still, yeah, the major cities, the big cities are very attractive, and there you will have lots of competition. So make sure that all the other positions that we talked before are aligned, so that the candidate decides for you. Yeah, some very important feedback from us why you should actually go for career changes and what might, yeah, speak against one. So of course, the career changer takes more screening time. You need to really check, is that the perfect match for your company? Can you grow with this candidate? Can the candidate grow with you as well? You might have a higher investment in the onboarding, in the training, in the continuous training. But what you definitely get, and that's why I really, as a career changer, really speak for career changers, you have the high motivation. You really have a high motivation. This person wants to change their life. So they want to have, like Dominic said, they want to have a career, not only a job. So they want to speed their career up, and they are highly motivated, willing to learn. Whatever you give them to learn, they take it and they want to improve. They are like a, I would like to say, Dominic called it a shapeable talent. I say it's like a blanco sheet. So sometimes it's even a bit harder to have someone with sales experience up front, because they have this old sales experience and working ways in their head, and it's really difficult to destroy these old structures and to go with some new structures and new ways into a really good sales career. But a career changer who likes to change his life and who is willing to learn is a shapeable talent, is a blanco sheet, and absolutely humble to improve and to work for this company. So there are, as you can see, way more pros than cons to go for a career changer.
Perfect. Thanks, Janina. That was everything on recruiting best practice. Again, some things in there might have been to like, we're doing it already. Some things, maybe now, especially on the numbers, are supposed to be perspective, right? And also, we do not claim to be the experts. All we say is we're observing many processes from very different companies at very different maturity states, from early stage startup to scale ups and very established companies with more than 10,000 employees. And those were just some insights that we did want to share. Now, there are no questions yet, unless the chat function isn't working, which could also be a factor, then please forgive us. If it's just everything clear, then that's also fine. If you do want to ask something, but you couldn't, then you can also raise your hand. And then I would just ask you to appear here next to us on stage and say it out loud. So do not fear that, and be open to asking your questions. Okay. Now, onboarding best practices. as we've said, it's another very important point, because obviously in our model, it's career starters or it's career changers. And what they usually expect, we hear it in the conversations, that's why they come to us, is some sort of enablement, some sort of training. And let's just share best practices that we have seen or that we have developed with companies. Okay. Now, first of all, very important, why do you need something like ramp up training at all? Very important, especially in times like these, where there's lots of offer for candidates to choose their employer. A lack of development opportunities, and that's a study that was done by Gartner, especially last year, so it's very new. A lack of development opportunities is causing them to leave. Yeah, so 51% say, hey, that's one of the reasons why I'm leaving. And it's causing them not to actually reach the quota because they're not continuously enabled. So it's not one thing, obviously, that only applies to onboarding, but it's especially relevant to onboarding, because there are lots of studies, there are great numbers on if there is a lack of, let's say, motivation caused by poor onboarding, that leads to a productivity loss that will never be recuperated over their lifetime at your company. That's why, especially in the beginning, it's so easy to do a great onboarding, but it's also very easy to miss. So that's why it's so critical. Then, very important, we still see some companies, right, that have like 1 day onboarding kickoffs, or maybe 2 day, and they get them all in a room and they try to do it, like really boot camp style, but really compressed. And then they say, hey, we equip them with all the knowledge. It's important for you to know, when you structure your onboardings, keep in mind, and that's just pure learning psychology, that one-time trainings just don't work. You've seen it yourself when you crammed in knowledge studying for an exam. You usually forget everything in sometimes a couple of days later. But here again, a Gartner report saying, especially sales reps forget 70% of the training in 1 week and 87% in a month. I mean, just think about that. That's why one-time impulses, you might see a spark and then, it drops again. That's why it needs to be over time. It needs to be implemented. You need to give time for them to digest, to apply, to get feedback, to redirect. That's how learning happens. And it's no longer one-time anything. Then what do we see in terms of ramping up new hires? We see that about 70% of the companies, at least with fewer than 500 employees, their sales onboarding, when we talk to them, is the company onboarding. And when they say we have sales onboarding, what they mean is, hey, we onboard them on our product, we onboard them on our team, on our processes, and we give them an introduction, if they have, but most have it, to our sales playbook, so how sales works. They also do body shadowing. They assign a more senior employee, let it be the head. Oftentimes it's a more experienced AE that helps them shadow on calls, or that gives feedback if they have questions. Usually it's not very called upon, because it's people that have quota themselves, so they need to generate revenue. So there is a dependency. You do case-based teaching or coaching, analyze tactics like a call or an email, give advice on opportunities or customer cases that are currently ongoing. And what we see is, on average, that whole process, company onboarding, playbook onboarding, takes about 4 weeks from what we see on average. Now, what's important is the best practices that we've seen, and there are companies doing it that way, is that it includes knowledge transfer. So don't mistake knowledge transfer for training. Knowledge transfer is, that's how our product works. That's what the industry is like. That is how you should write an email. That's knowledge transfer, but it should also involve training. And training is application, feedback, reconvening, application, feedback. That's very important. This company's doing that. That's most effective. And it should follow very, very clear structure with deliverables over time. So when employees join you, Ideally, they get laid out what their onboarding journey is like, including training. And what we see best practices is it's separated, right? One is company onboarding. It's important to know, obviously, what are the people I'm working with? What is the industry? What is the product? How are decisions being made at these companies, right? What motivations are being, or what behavior are being cherished? The other one is fundamental sales skills. So especially when it's career changes or career starters, show them how sales is being done. That's important. And that costs time. That's what we said. Carrying those profiles is more of an investment necessary. So question yourself if you have the bandwidth internally for them to sit down to show them how it's done. And when they have the fundamental sales skills, then they can learn what that means in your company environment. Okay, so meaning they now know how to do prospecting, they know how to do customer discovery, and now they are ready to learn how that is being done in the context of your company. But from a logical point of view, first, they have to learn the fundamental skills before they're ready to know how it's being done at your company. And oftentimes that is skipped and you immediately jump to company specific sales knowledge. And you need to really accompany them over time. So a minimum 10-week onboarding program of any kind. Then, just like we've tried to distill down how candidates make decisions, based on our training experiences at the company, we've tried to distill what defines sales success into one formula. Okay, and there are three main input factors. One is your company environment. So that starts with, are you ready to hire an BDR or SDR? So are you ready to hire junior sales profiles? Meaning, have you validated your product market fit? Have you validated your ideal customer profile buying persona? So are you ready to hand that over to someone that's very junior, that needs direction to just execute? Because they will be busy enough executing that experimenting will be difficult and sometimes overwhelming to them. And especially when besides just the messaging and the market fit, you're quickly changing how you pay people, you're quickly changing who's leading them, when you quickly change or when your product isn't ready yet. So all these things go into your company environment. So to what level is it functional or dysfunctional? Do the employee have the right skills? So the right sales skills. If you have inbound, then do they have the inbound skills? If it's outbound, do they have outbound skills? And then are they motivated? Because it doesn't matter if you have what it takes, if you're just not motivated to apply it and take action. And if all of these three are aligned, think of it like a spider web, they're at least filled enough, then nothing stands in the way of a sales rep performing to your quota. Then very important, yeah, and that's a slide that doesn't come from us, but just generally for you. Some of you might have a learning and development background, may know that. When you design your ramp-up programs, there's a certain pedagogy on how people learn effectively nowadays when on the job. And that's called 70-20-10. We'll start with the 10. So usually it all starts with structured learning, a learning event. So we soak up knowledge in a structured setting, a guided course, a workshop, that some may do. So we see also bigger companies with sales enablement teams, they provide learning videos. That could be such structured learning event. 10% of what we learn comes from that. Yeah? Then 20% is learning from others. That's how you develop momentum. So from what you've learned, you discuss that with peers. You discuss it with managers, with coaches, internal, external. So you get your sounding board. You talk about it, right? When you teach it, or when you talk about it, you verbalize it, you learn it, and you get feedback on that. You have the aha moment. So you need to interact with others on what you learn. That's why peer-based learning. So whenever you have onboarding, ideally make sure you have groups that go through the training together. It builds cohesion, it builds team, it builds momentum, especially when you are remote, but also they learn so much from one another. So that's another 20% social learning. And the bulk of what they learn comes from what we call learning on the job or workplace integration. So everything that they've learned through structured learning, through social interactions, is then being solidified by putting it into practice in the context of their day-to-day work. That's important, in the context of the day-to-day work. So not in some theoretical setting, but they need to apply it. They need to throw it against the wall. They need to see what comes back, and then they question themselves. They go back to what they've learned. They kind of adjust their own radar. You have the aha moment of, okay, that's why it worked, that's why it didn't work, but all in the context of what their job currently needs. And that accounts for 70% of learning. So that formula, 70, 20, 10, is what we've seen, and we've tried a lot from a pedagogical point of view, what really yields the best learning results for on-the-job training. And now question yourself, if for your onboarding, if you have elements of all of the above, or maybe just structured learning, but you don't ask if they are applying it in their day-to-day, and you don't check on that, and you don't let it get feedback from peers. That's one insight that we can really share that usually works best, and that's what we commonly refer to as blended learning. Okay. Now, and based on that, and that's just for you to know, we have also now in January introduced a 3-month ramp-up program that we're providing to all our candidates, regardless of what each company may offer or may not offer, because we've seen there's a huge spread in quality and quantity of onboarding. Based on that, not the environment isn't always there for candidates to perform properly. And that's why now every candidate is getting the 3-month program, where the first month is more training, but that's just the top of the funnel, outbound, how to organize themselves in small groups of 2 to 5. Again, peer-based learning, social with a trainer, where they also learn from each other and other people and their work context. And then for the remainder of the program, for month 2 and 3, they have continued access to tools. So on-the-job tools that allow them to pull knowledge nuggets from what they learned, look at it again, apply it in their day-to-day, ask our coaches in the support community if what they did was right or not, or ask the peers that they went through the training, getting continued feedback, even if the formal training, the structured learning ended, and then having a once-a-month coaching session with a trainer that allows them to, fine-tune what they worked on before, allows them to remove blockers. But that way, at least for 3 months, you have elements of that 70, 20, 10, and included in that. You can, of course, prolong it, make it 6 months internally or externally with companies like us, but make sure, again, that you do include all of these elements and do not just show videos, or do not just let them read text. We have an attention span of 5 seconds, right? Worse than a goldfish. And so it's just giving them content is not going to cut the job to making sure that they're actually going to perform well on the job. Yeah? And just lastly, in terms of content, if you structure your onboarding, what should it include? And regardless almost of what you do, what is very, very critical are these 3 that are highlighted here. So those are sales funnel stages, right? Usually junior sales talent focuses on outbound or inbound, but it usually stops with qualifying customers. The closing from most tech companies is being done by an account executive. Some of you might have full cycle profiles. Okay, that's a different story. But what is very important is that they learn to be self-sustaining, that they learn how to survive, that even if there's nothing coming in, that they learn lead generation, that they learn how to communicate effectively, orally, verbally, and written, and learn to improve themselves based on experiences. And what all of them are lacking usually, especially career stars and career changers, are how to organize themselves and how to master the mental game of sales. And that is what usually companies don't offer, and that's why we want to highlight it. Please do talk to them about what are pipeline dynamics. What is a pipeline? If you have an objective of, let's say, scheduling 20 demos in a month, on doing X of revenue, how do you deduct for yourself what I need to invest on a daily basis in order to hit that goal. Most salespeople, even senior ones, work very unstructured because they don't know conversion rates between stages and therefore don't work backwards, knowing that if I want goal X, what do I need to invest today? What output do I need to have achieved by the end of today? That I make sure that by the end of a month, I'm successful. So that's usually a complete game changer, knowing that success is plannable. And it's just about how I organize myself and that I make time for what drives that. That is really, really critical. So productivity hacks, how to work with calendar blockers, how to master their mental game, how to not let them pull down from a no, that it's a muscle that you need to train, that is increasingly important for them to not churn, for those to get the tools. So do make sure you do have content included on that. And do make sure data-driven sales is also neglected, that when they run sequences, so communication campaign across different channels, they learn how to read the data, they learn how to optimize it, they learn how to read if they need to improve the email body or if they need to improve the subject line, so that they learn to learn from their mistakes and their experiences, have that beginner mindset, and don't just take things for granted, but keep improving. Okay. Great. That's it. Yeah, now almost at the hour mark. Sorry that now did take a little longer than we actually planned. We do stick to the promise, ending at 12 punctually. Any questions that you have, you can always share them with us afterwards. Please do write us, Janina at highrise.com or Dominic at highrise.com. We'll be happy to answer. You get the recording, you get the slides. But are there any questions that are really burning that you do want to ask now? Then please raise your hand or put them in the chat. I don't think so. Perfect. I think people are ready for lunch too. Again, please excuse if that didn't work for some reason. Otherwise, we just think it's clear. Or was there somebody raising his hand? See back. No, maybe that was just accidental. So again, thanks for tuning in. It was a lot of fun. But Janina, I'll let you have the closing words.
Thank you so much. Yeah, happy to see that there were so many interested people. Thank you. And again, I just want to emphasize, if you have questions, if you want to work on something, just ping us and we will have a look on your current process. I can give you some impulses as well. And I just see there is a great session. Oh, thank you, Luis.
Perfect. Thanks for the feedback, Luis.
So yeah, just ping us whenever there is something we can support you with, and helping you find your perfect match. Yeah. So have a great lunch, all of you, and hope to see you soon on our next masterclass. Have a great week, successful week. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Janina, and see you all very soon.
Yes, definitely. Bye.
Bye-bye.